taxi rolled away, leaving Amara Hayes standing at the bottom of a long, winding drive that led toward a house that looked less like a residence and more like a fortress carved out of shadow and stone. Blackwell Estate. The name alone felt heavy, like it carried history, secrets, and lives that had once filled its halls. The air was cool and still, the tall iron gates already closing behind her with a slow, deliberate mechanical hum, as if the house had swallowed her whole. This was supposed to be a job, temporary, 3 months of steady pay, enough to get her brother's tuition back on track. That was all she needed, nothing more. She adjusted the strap of her bag on her shoulder and began walking, her footsteps echoing along the stone path. The estate was beautiful in a cold, distant way, like art you aren't allowed to touch. Towering windows, ivy climbing along stone walls, an expanse of gardens manicured with precision, but lacking warmth. Even the fountain in the center courtyard was silent, the water still, as if someone had turned the entire place on mute. The front door opened before she reached it. A man stood there, not a butler, not staff. She knew instantly Adrian Blackwell. His presence didn't need introduction. Tall, sharply built, dressed not in the glossy arrogance of wealth, but in something deceptively simple. Dark slacks, rolled sleeves, no tie. Yet everything about him was refined, controlled, held tight like a violin string wound just to the brink of breaking. His eyes were the first thing she noticed. Not cold, not warm, just tired. A bone-deep exhaustion she recognized in herself when she looked in the mirror. She had prepared for someone loud, entitled, impatient. The kind of man who chewed through assistants and staff the way CEOs chewed through board meetings and break-room coffee. She had prepared armor for arrogance. Instead, she found silence. He studied her, not in a way that made her feel judged, but seen. And that was somehow worse. "Miss Hayes," he said, his voice low, smooth, controlled. "You're early." "I thought it was better not to keep anyone waiting," she replied, though her throat felt dry. He didn't smile, but something flickered. Approval, maybe just recognition. He stepped back, allowing her inside. The interior was stunning. Vaulted ceilings, rich wood, marble floors polished to a liquid shine. But it was silent. No voices, no footsteps, no soft hum of life. A house this size should have noise, movement, warmth. It felt like a museum no one visited anymore. "Your role is simple," Adrian said, walking ahead of her down a long hallway, his pace steady and measured. "Discretion, order, quiet. I value routine. I do not like disruptions." She nodded. She understood structure. Routine kept fear away. Routine kept life manageable. He stopped at the end of the hall and turned to face her fully. "This house has rules," he said, the air shifting, thinning. Amara felt the hairs on her arms rise. "Follow them," he continued. His gaze held hers, sharp enough to cut, soft enough to pull. And never, under any circumstances, enter the West Wing. The words settled between them like a lock clicking shut. Something unspoken trembled in the walls, like the house itself was holding its breath, waiting, listening. Amara didn't look away. "Understood," she said quietly. But the question had already rooted in her mind. What was in the West Wing, and why did his voice sound less like a command, and more like a warning? The silence deepened. The job had begun. The first night in Blackwell Estate did not feel like night at all. It felt like a held breath that never released. Amara stood in her new room, looking out through tall windows at the vast grounds. The sky was dark, but the house did not sleep. It watched. It listened. It waited. She had unpacked only the essentials: A few folded clothes, a framed picture of her brother Eli smiling with missing front teeth. A reminder of why she was here. Why she had to stay. Why she could not afford to run, even if something inside her whispered that she should. She tried to settle into the silence, but the silence was not empty. It was thick, heavy, like a memory too painful to speak, but too loud to silence. Then she heard it. Not footsteps. Not voices. Music soft. Uncertain. A piano note played slowly, one key at a time. As if someone was remembering a melody rather than performing it. She followed the sound down the hallway, her steps gentle against polished wood floors. The melody drifted and echoed through the long corridors. She moved toward the source without thinking, as if the sound itself was calling her name. She reached the open drawing room and stopped at the threshold. Adrian sat at the piano, his back straight, his hands resting on the keys. His head bowed as though each note cost something to play. He looked like a man holding onto the last thread of something already gone. Amara stayed still, watching him, not wanting to intrude, but unable to turn away. The music stopped. Silence grew. He did not look at her, but he knew she was there. You do not have to hide your footsteps in this house. His voice was quiet and calm, as if they were speaking through shadows instead of words. There is no one here to disturb. Amara hesitated then, stepped inside. She did not speak at first, not because she feared him, but because the house itself seemed to demand quiet. "Do you always play at night?" she asked softly, slowly, carefully without letting emotion spill. Adrian pressed a single note. Low, steady, as if answering. Night is the only time the world stops moving. The only time I can hear myself think. The answer settled deep inside her chest, because she understood more than she wished she did. He turned his head slightly, not fully toward her, just enough for her to see the exhaustion beneath his composed exterior. The sleepless ache, the quiet grief most people fear. Silence, he said. But silence is the only place where truth does not hide. Amara felt her breath catch as if his words had touched something raw inside her. Something she kept buried for years. Something she never allowed anyone to see before she could respond. A faint sound echoed from deeper within the house. A sound like a door closing in the west wing. A space, forbidden. A space sealed by his warning. Adrian went still. His hands frozen above the keys. His eyes darkened with something she could not name. Do not go near that part of the house. His voice was softer than before, but sharper. Carved from something, fragile and dangerous. It is not a place for the living. Amara felt the chill move through her skin, not from fear, but from the certainty that something in that wing was not gone, not forgotten, not silent. The house did not sleep. The house remembered. Now so did she. The morning arrived without truly arriving light. Touched the windows, but the house remained dim as though it preferred. Shadow Amara moved through the kitchen, organizing cupboards, checking supply lists, planning the rhythm of the day. She worked, silently, because silence was the language of this place. Even the air seemed to request quiet. She had learned 2 things since arriving. Adrian Blackwell did not sleep, and the house did not forget. Near midday, she carried a tray toward the study where Adrian spent most of his hours. She paused at the door, hearing voices inside. Not loud, just 2 tones, one smooth and strained, the other sharp and cultured. You cannot keep living like this, Adrian. The second voice said, your absence is noted everywhere. Board meetings, shareholder, events. People are talking. Let them talk. Adrian's voice was steady, cold in the way a wounded thing protects itself. This house is suffocating you, the voice continued. You think no one knows. What is behind those locked doors? You think the past is buried, but the past is beginning to stink. The words hit. Something in the air like a slap. Amara stepped back, but the tray rattled lightly, betraying her presence. The study door opened sharply. A tall woman stood there, very composed and painfully elegant. She looked at Amara with a measured stare as sharp as a blade. "So this must be the new one," she said. Her tone held no warmth, not even curiosity, only judgment. Adrian appeared behind her. Jaw tight, eyes unreadable. "Clara," he said. "Simply?" "Ah, yes." The woman smiled without smiling, the ghost of the West Wing. Finally finds a replacement. Amara did not understand the comment, but she felt it like a shadow, passing directly through her chest. Clara glided down the hallway, her heels silent despite their height. The door closed behind her, leaving the echo of something poisonous in her wake. Adrian stood still, one hand braced on the doorframe. He looked like a man trying to outrun his own heartbeat. "Bring the tray inside," he said. "No sharpness, no authority, just tiredness." Amara followed him into the study. The room was filled with tall windows and shelves of untouched books. A fire burned, though. The day was not cold, as if the house needed the flame to stay alive. She set the tray down, poured. Tea waited. Adrian did not sit. He stood by the window watching the grounds. "Clara is my past," he said finally, not looking at her. "The West Wing holds what remains of that past. Some rooms are better left closed." Amara felt the weight of his words. Grief does not leave just because time moves. Some grief builds rooms, locks, doors, erects wings of houses no one must enter. Yet, behind his voice there was something else, something fragile. A question without being asked. "Will you stay, even with this darkness?" Amara found her answer rising before thought. "I am here, not afraid." For the first time since she arrived, the house breathed slow, deep, as if acknowledging her presence, not as an intruder, but as someone who might change everything. Night unfolded slowly over Blackwell Estate, a night thick with thunderclouds and the kind of heavy quiet that warns of a storm before it begins. Amara had finished her work early. She tried to read, tried to rest, tried to settle the twisting thoughts inside her. But something in the house was restless, and restlessness spreads outside. The first rumble of thunder crawled across the sky. A low warning, a memory, rose in her chest like a wave. Rain on asphalt, screeching tires, her brother's cry, her own voice begging, "Don't go, don't leave me here." She shut her eyes until the memory retreated to its cage. Another rumble. The lights flickered once, then again, then went. Dark. The house exhaled. Hallways that already felt watchful now felt alive, breathing, moving, listening. Then she heard it. Soft footsteps. Not hers. Not Adrian's. Slow, careful, light, and familiar in a way she did not understand. The sound came from the West Wing hallway. The one she had been told never to enter. The one sealed by grief. The one that held the echo of Clara's cruel words. Her hand trembled on the railing, the dark pressed close. The house felt like a throat swallowing her into silence. A flash of lightning illuminated the corridor, and for one heartbeat she saw someone, a figure at the far end, walking, not threatening, just standing, still watching. The thunder cracked, and darkness snapped back. Her breath tightened, her pulse hammered, and then a hand touched her shoulder. She spun and found Adrian. Lightning flared again in the window, behind him, casting his face in sharp silver shadow. He did not look afraid, he looked shattered. "You heard it." His voice was quiet, not a question. Truth. Amara nodded slowly. The thunder rolled again. This time she did not flinch because the storm outside was nothing compared to the storm inside this house. Adrian's voice was low, nearly a whisper. "There are memories in this house that never learned how to stay silent. They move, they breathe, they linger because I would not let them go." He looked toward the West Wing, not with fear but with grief. So raw it almost had shape. That wing belonged to someone I loved, someone I trusted, someone who left and took the air from this house with her. Lightning again. His face was open for a moment. "Unguarded and unbearably human, I told you not to enter, because I did not want the past to touch you. You do not deserve to carry what I still cannot put down. Amara felt the ache in him, the kind that builds walls around the heart and calls them protection, but walls can become cages, she knew. That better than anyone. The house shuddered with thunder, the shadows flickered like memory, and she saw it then. Not just loneliness, but longing. Adrian was not warning her away from danger. He was trying to protect the last unbroken thing in his life. The storm raged against the windows, but inside the hallway, silence held its own kind of electricity. She spoke softly. Then, let me help you open the doors when you are ready. His breath caught as if no one had ever offered before. The house listened. The past listened. The storm listened. Something had changed. Something had shifted, and nothing in Blackwell Estate would ever be quiet again. The storm passed, but it left the house changed. The air felt charged, as if the walls themselves remembered being shaken, as if something had awakened and was now walking quietly behind every silence. Amara tried to return to routine the next morning. She folded linen and arranged flowers and checked pantry shelves, but every sound felt amplified. Every shadow felt heavier. Every hallway felt like it was waiting for something. She found Adrian in the breakfast room, the windows wide and bright, with new sunlight. He sat at the table, but he was not eating. His hands rested loosely around a coffee cup gone cold, his gaze distant as though he was looking at something beyond sight. She hesitated before entering. His eyes lifted to her immediately, as if he had been waiting. His voice low, steady, always steady, but laced with something new, something unguarded. She sat across from him. The morning light softened him, made him look less like a fortress, more like a man trying to remember how to be human. Clara arrived yesterday to remind me of who I was. He spoke without shifting his gaze. But she left, reminding me of who I refused to be again. Amara listened. No questions, no judgment, only presence. And in this house, presence mattered, more than words. He continued. Clara and I were engaged. Everyone said we were perfect. She was the face of Blackwell, the future, the legacy, everything that looked right. But something can look right and still be wrong. Sometimes painfully wrong. His voice quieted further, almost a whisper. She betrayed me with someone I trusted, and when the truth came out, she left. Left this house. Left this life. Left everything except the part of herself that still lives in the West Wing. Amara felt the weight of his confession settle inside her chest. Not heavy, just real, achingly real. She spoke softly, not to comfort, but to acknowledge you loved her. Lightning did not strike, glass did not shatter. He simply closed his eyes. I loved the person I believed. She was not the person she chose to become. Silence stretched between them, but it was no longer cold. It was understanding. Then footsteps echoed in the hallway. Quick, purposeful, unwelcome. Clara walked into the room. No announcement. No hesitation. As though she still lived here. As though nothing had changed. She moved with a polished grace that had once charmed the world, but now felt sharp, controlled, dangerous. Amara stood. Clara's eyes slid to her, assessing, calculating, deciding. So, this is the reason the windows are open again, Clara said, her tone almost kind, which made it sharper than cruelty. Adrian rose slowly. No hostility, just certainty. Leave Clara. Clara's smile did not break, but her eyes flashed with something dark, sadness, not regret, ownership. I left once, she said, soft and lethal, but you never let me go. You closed the West Wing. You kept my dress, my photographs, my memories, my ghost. She stepped closer, her voice a whisper meant to be heard. You kept me here, Adrian. You did that. Not me. Silence hit the room like thunder. Then Clara turned to Amara, still smiling. Too gently. Be careful, dear. This house has a way of keeping what it wants. She walked out, leaving perfume and tension and something colder than winter behind her. Adrian did not move. Amara did not speak because both of them felt it now. Not jealousy. Not rivalry. A haunting. Something still lived in the West Wing, and it was not done with them yet. Amara did not see Adrian for the rest of the day. The house swallowed him, the way cliffs swallow waves silently, inevitably. She worked through the hours without rushing but without stopping. The silence had changed again. It was no longer simply absence. It was waiting. Every hallway felt like it led toward a truth no one wanted, spoken aloud as dusk approached. She noticed the sky turning a deep violet, the color of bruises healing, the color of memories softening. She found herself drawn toward the music room, not because she heard the piano, but because she expected to. The room was empty. The piano closed, the air still. She exhaled slowly. Maybe tonight the house would rest. Then she saw him. Adrian was standing on the terrace just beyond the glass doors, the evening wind stirring his hair, his posture straight, but his shoulders carrying weight that looked centuries old. She stepped outside, not making a sound, yet he felt her presence. He always felt her. I thought I had buried that part of my life. He spoke quietly, not looking at her. But now it's as if the past has been walking these halls again. Amara moved closer, not to touch, but to stand beside him, to share the air he was breathing. Sometimes that was enough, when something breaks. She said softly, "We think closing the door stops the sound." But grief echoes. He turned his head slightly, just enough for her to see the sadness in his eyes. Not the sharp kind, not the angry kind, but the tired kind that comes from loving too deeply. I spent years building walls, so nothing could reach me. But you. He paused. The unfinished sentence hung between them. Fragile real. Amara waited. Because truth is only spoken when there is space to speak it. You walk through this house like you are not trying to fix anything. He said, his voice softer. Now you simply see it. You see all of it. And somehow the silence feels different when you are here. The wind moved through the garden, carrying the faint scent of rain. Or memory. Amara lowered her gaze. I know what it is to lose something to live in, a place that remembers what you are trying to forget. I know that feeling too well. His breath caught. A small thing, but she heard it. Tell me, he said. And the request was not command, but invitation. Her fingers tightened around the edge of the railing. When the thunderstorm comes, I remember the night I lost my parents. I remember my brother calling my name in the dark. I remember telling him it would be okay, when I was not sure it ever would be. Her voice did not break. But the truth inside it did. Adrian turned fully toward her now, his expression stripped of armor. You have been carrying this alone. We all carry alone, she whispered until someone stays. The words hovered. Quiet, certain. Then a sound moved through the estate, not wind, not footsteps. A soft creaking from the west wing. The unmistakable sound of a door opening. Adrian's jaw tightened. Amara felt her pulse seize. The house was not finished with them. Adrian stepped closer, close enough that she felt his warmth, close enough that silence became intimacy. Stay with me tonight, he said. Not out of fear, not out of need, but out of truth. Not as the staff, not as a witness to my grief. Stay, because the house is not the only one remembering things. Amara did not speak. She simply nodded, because some choices are not made. They are recognized, and in that moment, both of them knew the past was moving, the future was forming, and the house was awake, fully awake. The night did not fall gently. It descended slow and deliberate, like velvet being pulled across the sky. Amara followed Adrian through the corridors in silence, the air between them charged like static waiting for a spark. The house was dimly lit by wall sconces, each flame flickering as if stirred by something unseen. They reached a door near the east wing. Guest rooms, a quiet space far from the west wing and its memories. Adrian opened the door for her. No instructions, no distance, just presence inside. The room, the light was soft, not cold like the rest of the house, but warm gold, alive. He did not turn to face her at first. He remained near the window, the moonlight catching the sharp line of his jaw. I did not ask, because I was afraid, he said at last. I asked because I cannot remember the last time I breathed without feeling like I was drowning. Amara felt her chest tighten, not with fear, but with recognition. She stepped closer, not touching yet, but close enough for her presence to settle, into the room beside him. You are not drowning, she said softly. You are resurfacing, and resurfacing hurts. His breath shook, the smallest sound, but in a house full of silence it echoed. He turned then, and for the first time since she arrived, he did not look like Blackwell, the unreachable billionaire, the restless ghost in the mansion. He looked like a man who had been alone too long. His eyes met hers, and the space between them broke. No sudden movement, no desperate clutching, just the slow closing of distance, as if gravity itself had decided they belonged in the same orbit. His hand lifted, hesitating inches from her cheek, as though asking a question without words. Amara leaned in, answering without speaking. His fingers grazed her skin, a touch, so gentle it felt like memory, like something familiar rediscovered. The house creaked softly, the way old wood sighs under emotional weight. The moment felt fragile. Sacred real, then a sound tore through the silence. Glass shattering, not near them, but deep in the west wing. Adrian froze. His hand still on her cheek, his pulse jumped beneath the surface of his calm. His eyes darkened with something old, something wounded, the west wing door. Amara whispered. He nodded. Does not open, unless someone opens it from the inside. Her heart pounded. The house, the memory, the past. Everything was shifting. Adrian stepped forward, but Amara caught his hand, not to stop him, but to stand with him. You will not go alone, she said. His eyes softened. The last wall falling, the last secret unguarded, I know. They turned toward the west wing hallway, the house watching. The air heavy, the silence alive. Two shapes, walking toward whatever waited in the darkness. Not separate, not unsure together. The past had awakened, but now, so had they. They stepped toward the west wing slowly, not creeping, not afraid but aware, the way one approaches a wound that is finally ready to be opened. The hallway was colder than the rest of the house, the light dimmer, the silence denser. Each step felt like walking deeper into memory. Not space. Amara felt it first, a shift in the air, like someone had just passed through. A breath that did not belong to either of them. Adrian's hand tightened around hers. Not possessive, not hesitant, just holding on to the only thing real in this moment. They reached the door. the same door he had forbidden her to enter. The door, the house itself seemed to guard. The door that was no longer closed. It stood open now, just enough to see darkness inside, just enough to feel the pull of something unresolved. Adrian exhaled once, a slow surrender, then pushed the door fully open. The room beyond was not haunted in the way stories describe. There were no shadows waiting to lunge, no whispers, no specters. It was worse. The room was exactly as it had been left, untouched, unchanged, frozen in the moment. Clara walked out of his life, a wedding dress hung near the window, flowing and elegant, coated with dust instead of sunlight. Sheets still covered furniture as if the house had tried to forget, but could not bring itself to remove anything that hurt. And there on a table under glass was a single envelope, yellowed at the edges, addressed in handwriting that belonged to someone Adrian once loved, to Adrian. In case I leave, his shoulders began to tremble, not shaking from fear, but from the unbearable pressure of feeling returning all at once. The kind that breaks a man before it mends him. Amara released his hand, only to step in front of him. Her presence, the quiet anchor, he did not have before. "It is time," she whispered. "Not to erase her, but to take yourself back." Adrian reached for the envelope. His fingers hovered above it. Then he withdrew his hand sharply. Pain was easier than answers. "I thought if I left this room, untouched," he said, his voice strained and soft, "the past would stay still. She would stay still, and I could keep the good without the ruin." Amara shook her head gently. "Pain kept sealed becomes poison. You have been breathing that poison. This house, as your heart has." Lightning flashed through the windows, not violent but revealing. Adrian took the envelope and opened it. The letter was short, not dramatic, not tender. Just truth. "I loved the idea of us, not the reality. You saw me as whole, but I was broken. I do not know how to stay. Forgive me if you can. Forget me if you must. But do not wait for me." Amara watched as the words hit him the way truths always do, quietly, without mercy, without apology. He did not cry. He did not collapse. He simply closed the letter, as if closing a door inside his chest. Then he looked at Amara. "I was holding on to something that was never coming back. All this time I thought love was something that could be lost and never found again." His voice dropped. "Lower. You proved me wrong, just by existing in the same room as my silence." Amara felt her breath unsteady, her heart loud and warm and terrified. She opened her mouth to speak, but before a word could form, they heard footsteps, soft, slow approaching, the room from the hallway behind them. Not Clara, not staff, not memory. Someone was in the house, someone alive, someone who did not belong, and the West Wing was only the beginning of what was waking up inside Blackwell Estate. The footsteps were not rushed, not panicked, not accidental. They were slow, measured, as if the person walking already knew exactly where to go, and expected to be found. Amara stepped instinctively in front of Adrian, not because she thought he needed protection, but because her body moved before her mind did. Something primal, something certain. Adrian's voice was quiet. "Stay close." The footsteps reached the threshold of the West Wing, then stopped. The silence that followed was not empty. It was listening. A familiar voice broke through. But familiar in the way. Thunder is familiar. You never did learn how to let go. Adrian Clara stood in the doorway, but not the Clara from the gala. Not the polished porcelain woman who moved like everything. belonged to her. This Clara looked raw, disheveled eyes red from crying or anger or both. She had not come here to reclaim him. She had come because something in her was unraveling. You opened the room. Her voice cracked. Not with sadness, but with disbelief. You actually opened it. Adrian didn't answer. His silence was no longer passive. It was final. Clara stepped into the room, her heels clicking on the cold floor. She didn't look at Amara, only at the wedding dress, at the sheet-covered furniture, at the life she left behind. Do you know what I wanted? Clara whispered, her voice trembling. I wanted to be enough for you. I wanted you to fix me. I wanted your love to fill the places inside me that were broken. She laughed once, a sound sharp enough to cut. But love cannot fix rot. It only makes you notice how deep the decay goes. Amara saw it clearly now. Clara was not a villain. She was drowning in the emptiness she mistook for freedom. Adrian took a slow breath, Clara. You left because you needed to run from yourself. Not from me, Clara flinched. She turned finally and looked at Amara. Not like a rival, but like a mirror. He will love you, she said, her voice barely holding. He will give you everything he gave me, and more, because you stayed. Where I ran, Amara felt tears sting, not for Clara's choices, but for the pain beneath them. But Clara's voice hardened. Love is not safe. This house is not safe. His grief is not gone. It is only sleeping. The thunder outside rumbled like an echo to her words. Clara stepped closer to Amara. Too close. Her eyes bright with something desperate. When he breaks. Because he will break. He always breaks. Make sure you do not break with him. Amara didn't flinch. Her voice was steady. Love is not about avoiding the breaking. It is choosing to break together and build again. The room went still. Clara closed her eyes for a moment. She looked young, lost human. Then she exhaled, turned and walked away. No dramatic exit. No final threat. Just the quiet surrender of a person who finally understood she no longer belonged to the past. She kept chasing Adrian's hand, found Amara's not claiming, not asking, just holding. The house felt different now. The silence softer, the air lighter. But outside the storm had changed direction, and something new, something larger than heartbreak was coming toward them. The past was finished. Now the world was about to test the future they chose to build together. Morning arrived like a held breath being released. Soft light moved through the halls of Blackwell Estate. The house no longer felt haunted. It felt expectant alive. Like something had shifted at the foundation. Amara stood in the garden just beyond the stone terrace. The air cool, the grass damp with dawn. She could hear the house behind her, not with sound but with presence. As if it was watching her, acknowledging her, accepting her, footsteps approached. But these were familiar. Steady grounded. Adrian joined her. His sleeves rolled, his hair still damp from a shower. But there was something different about him now. The grief had not disappeared, but it no longer drowned him. He had surfaced. For a moment neither of them spoke. They simply stood side by side, breathing the same morning air. The board knows I have stepped back from operations, Adrian said finally, and they want you to return. Amara finished for him. He nodded. Yes, but this time, I am not going back for them. I am going back because I am ready to live again. She turned to look at him, not surprised, only certain. Clara was right. In one thing, love does not stay safe. Love breaks you open. But it also teaches you how to rebuild. His eyes softened at her words, his voice low. I do not want a house frozen in the past anymore. I want a home, a living one. A breathing, one with laughter and noise and messy mornings, with someone who does not run from my silence but sits with it. The breeze moved lightly across them, carrying the scent of jasmine from the garden vines. Amara felt something warm rise in her chest, not sudden, not overwhelming. A quiet truth, ready to be spoken, then stay with me, she said, not as a housekeeper, not as a guest in a life you were not meant to live. Stay with me as the person who opened the doors no one else could touch. Adrian stepped closer, the space between them dissolving. His forehead rested gently against hers, his voice barely more than breath. I thought grief had taken the part of me that could love again. But you were the proof that love does not die. It waits. His hands moved to her face, soft, certain. No hesitation. Stay with me, he whispered. Not as something temporary, not as something borrowed, but as the life I choose. The words settled into her like the sunlight warming the garden. Her answer did not need breath. It was already in her eyes. Yes, their kiss did not feel like fireworks or storms. It felt like arriving, like the last piece of a room finally sliding into place. The kind of love that does not burn fast, but burns forever. The house breathed around them, the walls no longer heavy, the silence no longer hollow. Later that day, the west wing door was opened wide. Sunlight poured into it for the first time in years. Furniture uncovered, dust brushed away, the wedding dress taken down, not discarded but folded carefully into a cedar chest. The past honored, not worshipped. Together they painted the walls again, not white, but a warm shade of rose gold, soft, alive. Hopeful, the room was no longer a monument to what was lost. It became something new, a studio, a place, for music, for creation, for life. As evening settled, Amara sat on the piano bench, Adrian beside her, their hands brushing as she pressed a single key. The note rang clear. No sorrow, no echo, just sound alive. The house no longer held its breath. Something had changed, something had healed, something had begun, and this time they would not run from the breaking. They would build from it, together. The end.